Go, move it, weave it.
You're under arrest. You're under arrest. Stop resisting.
I just want to tell you guys this. The best, times 10, Conor McGregor you've ever seen right now. Better than he was when he was in his prime. The most focused, wants to do everything right. I mean, he's training his ass off each and every day. He's eating right. He's going to church. He's doing everything he's supposed to do. This is not a Conor McGregor that we've seen in the past couple of years. This is the best Conor McGregor that I've personally ever seen. And I'm talking on TV and everywhere. I've never seen a Conor McGregor like this, more focused than I ever thought he ever could get, but he is.
What's the David Feldman confidence meter at on us seeing him fight at the White House this summer?
Conor had said publicly, you know, that his contract was a little shaky because of the pay-per-view point that he had in there, but I'm sure that the UFC wants Conor McGregor to fight. He's going to fight, and they're going to make it work, and it makes sense for him to fight the White House. So my confidence level is probably around a 99%.
We're getting into this with the game here. All right.
And my strong rockets. These are missiles, yeah. These are fucking missiles. I'm 100%. This is, yeah? We're going in here 100%. I'm going into this fight 100% Conor McGregor. Not 92. 100% Conor McGregor. So it has to be really meticulous. We were right there with the last one. As a unit, we do it, right?
On Circus, is he the hottest guy right now? I don't see anybody controlling the media as well as Circus. Circus getting more headlines and doing more clicks on social media than Ilia Topuria, just by example. I mean, I feel like this guy's red hot.
McGregor just declared war on Masvidal, and what happened next changes everything. While everyone's talking about comeback fights and White House events, the real story is happening behind the scenes. This isn't just another celebrity boxing match or some manufactured beef for pay-per-view buys. This is a man desperately trying to prove he's still got that killer instinct, that primal fire that made him the most feared fighter on the planet. But here's what nobody's telling you. Every single move McGregor's making right now, every public appearance, every training video, every calculated statement, it's all psychological warfare aimed at one target. And Masvidal knows it. The question isn't whether this fight happens. The question is whether the Conor McGregor who shows up is the same destroyer who dismantled Jose Aldo in 13 seconds, or just another faded star chasing one last payday.
It looks fun. It looks really fun. But Circus has now made headlines. Circus works with Coach Cal. That's a piece of this story because Circus came out yesterday and said, I'm the #1 contender. I am to fight for a belt. But if there's a logjam at 155, fine, I'll just go to 45 and fight for the belt. And I don't know how much he meant it, but these things are interesting. Once they're said, they become real.
Here's where things get absolutely wild. When McGregor says he's taking any belt in any division, that's not trash talk. That's the mindset of someone who's convinced himself he's still operating at championship level. But look at the facts. He's won exactly one fight in the last 5 years. One, against Donald Cerrone, who was already on his way out of the sport. Meanwhile, Masvidal's been grinding through wars with Usman, Burns, and Covington. Real killers, elite competition. And you know what's crazy? McGregor's team is acting like those losses to Dustin Poirier never happened. Like getting finished twice by the same guy doesn't matter because it was 3 years ago. But the octagon has a long memory. Your body has an even longer one. Every time you get dropped, every time you tap out, it leaves a mark. Not just physically, but mentally. That doubt creeps in. That hesitation in the pocket. That split second where you're thinking about the last time, instead of focusing on the moment in front of you.
One of the reasons I think he is serious is because he then justified it, and he was talking about Coach Cal. All he said, though, is, my coach, we did the math, we can do it. And Coach Cal is a calculus genius, and he breaks everything down, and calories in, calories out, and monitors your workouts. And I'm just sharing for you that, what do you think of that? I mean, this kind of went wild online. My own phone was getting text messages. Like, James, I was on an airplane, and James Madison has led me. I was like, did you see this about Sarukian? And, I stopped what I was doing.
But here's the kicker. McGregor's not just fighting Masvidal. He's fighting Father Time, ring rust, and his own legacy all at once. Think about this. He's 35 years old in a young man's game. He's been out of consistent competition for years, while guys like Masvidal have been staying active, staying sharp, staying hungry. And now he wants to waltz back in and act like nothing's changed. Like he can just flip a switch and become that mythical left hand again. The brutal reality is this. Elite fighters don't take extended breaks and come back better. They come back older, slower, and more vulnerable. Their reflexes aren't as crisp. Their timing isn't as perfect. Their recovery between rounds isn't what it used to be. And against someone like Masvidal, who's built his entire reputation on finishing guys who think they're tougher than they actually are, that's a recipe for disaster.
From weight class, and I'm going to fight for a title. Okay, great. Can you get a headline? Is that something that people believe and that people are interested in? Check and check. He had those boxes. A next step, but it's a much higher step, is to get the guy with the belt or the guy with the opportunity to respond. He already got Lopez. I imagine we're going to hear from Volkanovski anytime now. What do you guys think about it? And but there's multiple.
Now listen to this part, because this is where the story gets really interesting. Behind all the bravado and social media posts, McGregor's camp is genuinely worried. Sources close to the situation are saying his sparring sessions haven't been going well. He's getting tagged by guys he should be dominating. His cardio is still a question mark after all this time away. And most importantly, that legendary confidence that used to intimidate opponents before they even stepped in the cage. It's not the same. You can see it in his recent interviews. The swagger is forced now, calculated instead of natural. He's trying to convince himself as much as he's trying to convince everyone else. And fighters can smell that desperation from a mile away. Masvidal's already talking about how McGregor sounds different, looks different, carries himself different. That's not accident. That's a predator recognizing wounded prey.
Fun that he's got all this different potential parity. But that doesn't answer the question on what you think about that, because in many ways, does it solve a problem? Sure it does. We acknowledge in this sport, Arman is the #1 contender. We acknowledge in the sport that Arman should be fighting for a world title. So how are we going to do it? Just move down to 145. Well, but we also acknowledge that Lerone Murphy should be fighting for a title. We acknowledge that.
Hold up, did you catch what just happened at that White House event? Because if you think that was just a photo opportunity, you're missing the entire psychological chess match playing out in real time. McGregor didn't just show up to shake hands and smile for cameras. He turned that entire event into a message to Masvidal. Every word, every gesture, every moment was calculated to show he still commands attention on the biggest stages. But here's what's brilliant about it. He's not just trying to intimidate his opponent. He's trying to convince the UFC brass that he's still the golden goose, still the guy who can sell 1 million pay-per-views without breaking a sweat. Because let's be honest, his negotiating position isn't what it used to be. He can't demand whatever he wants anymore. He needs this fight as much as, if not more than, Masvidal does. And that desperation, that need to prove he's still relevant, that's exactly the kind of pressure that breaks fighters who aren't mentally prepared for it.
Options. I'm just wondering, like, what do you think about that? Do you believe that a bigger guy in Arman, do you believe if he cuts down, he therefore takes precedent? Do you believe that? Because when Ilia Topuria, who wasn't just the #1 guy, he was the champion of the world, moved to 55, there was a little bit of pushback by you, the community. There's a little bit of pushback that just said, hey, listen, you haven't proved yourself here yet. Khabib himself said, we're not going to fight him. You're speaking for Islam. This is before Islam had left the way. He said, we're not going to fight.
And get this, While McGregor's playing mind games and orchestrating media spectacles, Masvidal's doing something completely different. He's staying quiet, training hard, letting his opponent do all the talking while he focuses on the only thing that actually matters when that cage door closes. Violence, pure, calculated, technical violence, and that should terrify McGregor's team. Because the Jorge Masvidal who knocked out Ben Askren with that flying knee, who battered Nate Diaz for 3 rounds, who went to war with Kamaru Usman twice, that guy doesn't get distracted by circus acts and publicity stunts. He sees through all the noise and focuses on the target in front of him. Which brings us to the most important question nobody's asking. What happens to McGregor's psyche if he gets hurt early in this fight? If Masvidal lands something clean in the first round and rocks him, because we've seen what happens when that aura of invincibility gets shattered. The panic sets in, the desperation, the realization that maybe the magic is gone forever.
We're putting everything in reverse. Like yesterday when Armand said it, this got a great reception. Everybody loved it. Ariel loved it. I loved it. James Madison loved it. I mean, I'm just sharing. But now that we've had a day and we've thought about it, do you still love it? And I think Armand is going to be just fine. I mean, I think that the final conclusion, he's going to be just fine. Stay at 155. The opportunity's coming. I think that that's where we're at. But he's now created another dialogue. So the way this works is we've got to exhaust all options.
But wait, it gets worse. The entire landscape of mixed martial arts has evolved while McGregor was away counting his money and launching whiskey brands. The level of competition is higher now. The game is faster, more technical, more brutal than when he was dominating featherweights and lightweights. Guys like Masvidal have adapted, improved, learned from every fight. Meanwhile, McGregor's been frozen in time, trying to recapture something that might not exist anymore. It's like watching a former chess grandmaster come back after years away and expecting to dominate players who have been studying new strategies, new techniques, new ways to exploit weaknesses he doesn't even know he has. The sport moved on without him. The question is whether he can catch up, or if he's about to get a brutal reminder of what happens when nostalgia meets reality in the most unforgiving arena in sports.
He's getting headlines. He's doing a great job. He's in front of the media. But, and there is a but, I've never liked the idea of, I want to fight for a championship. I've never liked that approach more than a specific guy. Than a specific, put your finger in the chest of Ilia Topuria. Oh, by the way, he happens to be champion. It happens to also be a championship opportunity. Boy, I hadn't even really thought of that.
Here's the part that should genuinely concern everyone in McGregor's corner. This isn't just about winning or losing anymore. This is about legacy preservation. Every time an aging legend steps back into competition, they risk erasing decades of accomplishments with one bad performance. Look at what happened to Chuck Liddell, Tito Ortiz, BJ Penn. Guys who were absolute killers in their prime, reduced to cautionary tales about knowing when to walk away. And the most dangerous part. McGregor's convinced himself this is different, that his situation is unique, that his natural talent and fight IQ will overcome ring rust, age, and inactivity. But talent without preparation is just potential. And potential doesn't win fights against seasoned killers who have been perfecting their craft while you've been perfecting your golf swing. Masvidal isn't some washed-up veteran looking for one last payday. He's a legitimate threat who's proven he can end fights violently and without warning.
I just want to fight him. I find that personal grudge approach to be stronger, but Arman's in a unique spot. And one of the things about the way that Arman is playing this is to make sure that he lets everyone know he doesn't care. That if you're trying to hold him down or you're trying to punish him for whatever it might be, he doesn't care. So, I like it. I think that this is wise. But 145.
Now here's where everything comes together, and why this fight is absolutely must-see television regardless of how you feel about either guy. We're watching two different kinds of desperation collide. McGregor's desperate to prove he's still that mythical figure who changed the sport forever. Masvidal's desperate to cement his legacy with the biggest knockout of his career against the most famous fighter in MMA history. Both men need this more than they're willing to admit publicly. Both have everything to gain and everything to lose. And when you put that kind of pressure, that kind of raw need for validation, inside a locked cage with no escape, something explosive is going to happen. The only question is which man's desperation turns into fuel and which man's desperation becomes his downfall. Because in this game, wanting something too badly can be just as dangerous as not wanting it enough. So there you have it. McGregor's betting his entire legacy on one fight against a guy who's built his reputation on destroying legends and breaking dreams. This isn't about rankings or title shots or who deserves what. This is about two warriors at completely different stages of their careers, colliding in what could be the most meaningful fight of both their lives. And honestly, I think we're about to witness either the greatest comeback story in MMA history or the most brutal reality check the sport has ever delivered. So here's my question for you, drop it in the comments. Do you think the old McGregor shows up, or is Masvidal about to end the mystique forever? If this breakdown opened your eyes to what's really at stake here, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell because this story is just getting started. When these two finally step in that cage, it's going to be absolute chaos, and you don't want to miss a second of it. I'll see you in the next one. But hold on a second, because while everyone's focused on the main event, there's a subplot developing that could completely change how this entire saga plays out. McGregor's been dropping hints about something bigger than just a one-off fight with Masvidal. He's talking about a comeback tour, multiple fights, reclaiming his throne across different weight classes. That's not the talk of a man planning to win one fight and ride off into the sunset. That's the mindset of someone who genuinely believes he can turn back the clock and dominate an entire division again. And you know what? That might be the most dangerous delusion of all. Because here's what happens when fighters convince themselves they're still in their prime when they're clearly not. They take unnecessary risks. They refuse to adapt their game plan. They rely on muscle memory from fights that happened half a decade ago instead of respecting the current reality of their abilities. McGregor keeps talking about that left hand like it's still a nuclear weapon, but power is the last thing to go for most fighters. It's everything else that deteriorates first. The footwork becomes a step slower. The defensive reactions become a fraction less sharp. The ability to recover from getting hurt diminishes significantly. And against a guy like Masvidal, who's literally made a career out of capitalizing on those tiny windows of vulnerability, those microscopic advantages become fight-ending opportunities. And here's something absolutely fascinating that nobody's talking about. The betting odds for this fight have been swinging wildly, and it's not because of anything either fighter has said or done recently. It's because the smart money, the guys who make their living analyzing fights and predicting outcomes, they can't figure out which version of Conor McGregor is going to show up. Is it going to be the precision striker who picked apart Masvidal Alvarez to become a two-division champion? Or is it going to be the hesitant, compromised fighter who got overwhelmed by Dustin Poirier's pressure and volume? The uncertainty itself has become a storyline, and that's unprecedented for someone of McGregor's stature. You want to know what's really wild? Masvidal's been studying tape of McGregor's losses obsessively, and he's found patterns that apparently nobody else has picked up on. Sources in his camp are saying he's identified specific tells, specific moments where McGregor's defense breaks down, specific combinations that cause him to shell up instead of countering. And if that's true, if Masvidal really has cracked the code on how to neutralize McGregor's offense while maximizing his own opportunities, this fight could be over before most people even realize what's happening. Because that's how high-level mixed martial arts works. It's not always about who hits harder or who's tougher. Sometimes it's about who's done better homework. But let's flip the script for a minute, because it would be absolutely foolish to count out a guy who's pulled off as many impossible victories as McGregor has. Remember, this is the same fighter who knocked out Jose Aldo, arguably the greatest featherweight of all time, with one perfectly timed counter punch. The same guy who completely dismantled Eddie Alvarez in a performance so dominant it looked like they were operating in different weight classes. When McGregor is locked in, when he's operating at peak efficiency, he doesn't just win fights. He makes elite competition look amateur. And that ability, that fight-changing power, it doesn't just disappear overnight. It might be dormant, it might be rusty, but it's still there somewhere. The question is whether ring rust and inactivity have dulled those instincts to the point where they can't be accessed when it matters most. Think about this from a purely technical standpoint. McGregor's entire fighting style is built on timing, distance management, and the ability to read his opponent's movements and react with split-second precision. Those are skills that require constant refinement, constant practice against live, resisting opponents who are trying to take your head off. You can hit pads all day long, you can shadowbox until your arms fall off, but nothing replicates the chaos and unpredictability of actual combat. And Masvidal brings a specific kind of chaos that McGregor hasn't faced in years. Here's where the psychological warfare gets really interesting, though. McGregor's been posting training footage that looks absolutely devastating. His speed looks good, his power looks crisp, his movement looks fluid. But experienced fighters and coaches are watching those same videos and seeing something completely different. They're noticing that he's working with the same training partners he's always worked with, guys who know his patterns, guys who aren't going to surprise him or push him outside his comfort zone. Real preparation for a fight like this requires getting worked over by hungry, anonymous killers who don't care about your reputation or your legacy. It requires getting hurt in sparring, getting pushed to your breaking point, and finding out whether you can still dig deep when everything goes wrong. And that brings us to something absolutely crucial that could determine the entire outcome of this fight: McGregor's pain tolerance and ability to fight through adversity. Back in his prime, he was known for having an iron chin and the heart of a warrior. But those devastating knockouts by Poirier, especially that brutal finish in their second fight, those leave permanent marks on a fighter's psyche. The first time you get seriously hurt in a comeback fight, your brain doesn't just process the current threat. It remembers every other time you've been in that position, every other moment where the lights went out and you woke up wondering what happened. That split second of hesitation, that involuntary flinch when punches start flying, that can be the difference between victory and another highlight reel knockout for your opponent. But here's what makes this whole situation even more compelling. Masvidal isn't just preparing for one version of McGregor. He's preparing for all of them. The aggressive pressure fighter who overwhelmed Alvarez, the patient counter-striker who picked apart Holloway, the desperate wrestler who kept shooting takedowns on Khabib. Because he knows that desperation makes fighters unpredictable, and unpredictable fighters are often the most dangerous ones. McGregor might come out swinging for the fences, looking for that one perfect shot that erases all questions about his decline. Or he might try to implement a completely different game plan, something nobody's seen before, in an attempt to catch Masvidal off guard. The reality is that both scenarios are terrifying for different reasons. A desperate McGregor throwing caution to the wind could land that legendary left hand early and end the fight in spectacular fashion. But a desperate McGregor could also gas himself out in the first round trying to force something that isn't there, leaving himself completely vulnerable to Masvidal's finishing instincts. And Jorge Masvidal has finished a lot of fighters who thought they were tougher than they actually were. Ask Ben Askren how that worked out for him. Ask Darren Till. Ask anyone who's ever made the mistake of standing in front of Masvidal and thinking they could just walk through his offense to land their own shots. You know what's absolutely insane about this whole build-up? Neither fighter can afford to lose this fight, but for completely different reasons. McGregor can't lose because it would essentially confirm that his championship days are over forever, that he's just another former great trading on past accomplishments. Masvidal can't lose because he's never going to get another opportunity this big, another chance to cement his legacy against someone of McGregor's stature and global recognition. That kind of mutual desperation, that winner-take-all mentality, it creates an atmosphere where anything can happen and probably will. And here's something that should absolutely terrify McGregor's team. Masvidal's been in big fights recently. He's felt the pressure of main event spots, championship fights, massive pay-per-view events. His nervous system is calibrated for that level of intensity and scrutiny. Meanwhile, McGregor hasn't experienced that kind of pressure in years. He's been comfortable, wealthy, removed from the stress and anxiety that comes with knowing that one bad night can derail everything you've worked for. When you're not used to that feeling anymore, when you've been insulated from real consequences for an extended period, stepping back into that environment can be overwhelming in ways you don't expect. But let's talk about what happens if McGregor actually wins this fight convincingly. If he comes out looking like the destroyer of old, if he finishes Masvidal in spectacular fashion and reminds everyone why he was considered the most dangerous striker in the sport. Suddenly, every narrative changes. Every doubt gets erased. Every question about his decline becomes irrelevant. He'd instantly become the biggest story in combat sports again, and the UFC would have their golden goose back just when they need him most. The ripple effects would be massive. not just for his own career, but for the entire landscape of mixed martial arts. Because here's the thing about McGregor that people sometimes forget. When he's motivated, when he's focused, when he has something real to prove, he doesn't just win fights. He creates moments that transcend the sport. He generates the kind of excitement and mainstream attention that turns casual observers into hardcore fans. And right now, with everything on the line, with his legacy hanging in the balance, he might be more motivated than he's been in years. That's either going to result in a spectacular return to form, or it's going to make his inevitable decline that much more brutal to watch. So here's what I want you to do. Go back and watch McGregor's greatest hits. Study that left hand that changed everything. Then watch Masvidal's recent wars and tell me you're not absolutely pumped for this collision. Because regardless of what happens, we're about to witness history. Either the resurrection of a legend or the birth of a new one. Drop a comment and let me know who you think walks away victorious. And don't forget to subscribe, because this is the kind of content you won't find anywhere else.